Welcome to IREX's presentation on the impact of higher education career services on employability in Iraq. Thank you very much for joining us from around the world today for what we hope will be an informative and enriching learning and sharing session. My name is Stanley Courier, and I'm pleased to be joined by my colleagues Amar Al-Ani, Ziako Shekho, and Dr. Lori Mason, coming to you live from the United States and Iraq today. During our presentation, we'll be presenting on different aspects of IREX's work, and we'll also be inviting you to participate via the chat, polls, and discussion throughout. As we get started today, we want to note that this session will take us on a journey of higher education institutional growth and innovation in Iraq over the past decade that IREX has had the privilege to support, as well as our close cooperation with individuals and institutions in this system, including career development centers, university faculty and staff, youth and alumni, industry partners, and ministry leaders with whom we cooperate closely. We've worked through the past decade with these partners amidst a context that has often included social and political unrest, economic fragility, and high levels of youth unemployment, as well as the ongoing effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and violence in the region, as well as globally. Despite these challenges, our goal today is to share and discuss with you some of the models that IREX has used with partners on the ground in Iraq to prepare youth with the skills, attitude, and mindset to transition effectively from higher education into the workforce, and for you to consider how these models might be relevant to your context as well. Before I move on, I'd like to just do a quick poll to see who's with us here today. Please feel free if you'd like to note in the chat what country you're joining from today and anything else that you'd like to share about yourself. Thank you. So we'll just give everyone a moment to note that in the chat. We'd love to see where you're joining us from. While you're doing that, I'll share that we have representatives on the team who are joining from different parts of the United States, as well as Baghdad and Erbil. Excellent. Nice to see that we have a few representatives in addition to our colleagues in the US, Iraq, Kurdistan, Mozambique, Silver Spring, United Kingdom. Excellent. Oh, Michigan, wonderful. Wonderful. Great to see that we have a nice representation from across the world in this session today. Thank you. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide. And I'd just like to share as we begin to discuss the Iraq context on career services and youth employability, the challenge that we'll be discussing today is that university graduates in Iraq face a challenging labor market and economic environment. And as I mentioned, this includes the effects of the COVID-19 global pandemic, as well as ripple effects of global conflict. Career development centers, or CDCs, as you'll hear us refer to them in the presentation today, address this by providing students and graduates with the information, skills, networks, and confidence to pursue meaningful career development-related opportunities, and also hopefully to thrive both in and outside of the workplace. And what is IREX's role? We work to support our government and industry partners in establishing and providing ongoing training and support to career centers at all 47 public universities in Iraq, which we'll talk about a bit later. I'd also just like to welcome our participant joining from Lebanon as well. Thank you for joining. So as we move on to the next slide, we'd like to share with you how IREX thinks about our role in addressing youth employability in Iraq. One of the tools that we're sharing with you here at a high level is our change process framework. This slide presents this framework in relation to our workforce development programming from the first step of building the process, which is working with Career Center staff, all the way through to systems level change. You'll notice that the first step centers around our direct engagement with Career Center staff at the university level, providing tools and a platform for exchange of best practices, dialogue, and resources on how to equip students for the workforce. In turn, Career Center staff work with students and private sector representatives, developing initiatives that we'll be speaking about today. This leads to additional involvement of faculty, private sector partners, and ministry, leading to the intermediate change we seek to achieve, which is students building their knowledge, confidence, and skills for employability, as well as the partners that we work with to gain further understanding and expertise in these areas too. Finally, leading to the systems level change that we'll be discussing throughout our presentation today. I'd like to turn the floor now to my colleague, Dr. Lori Mason, who has led IREX's work in Iraq since its inception, as she shares with you some of the key milestones in our programming and collaboration with partners over the past decade. Lori, turning the floor to you.
Thank you, Stanley, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Now, as Stanley just shared, you see much of our approach to programming over the years. Well, I would like to share with you a little bit of how we arrived at this framework. And as we go throughout the presentation, we hope to paint a picture of how we've incrementally gathered data, applied information, and adapted our programming as my colleagues share specific areas of our work and the initiatives that were added as a result of learning, finding what works, and more importantly, finding what didn't work and adapting. We have had the great fortune of working for over a decade in Iraq, supporting universities in many areas that focus on improving quality and relevance of academic programming. And what we're going to share with you today are specific to the workforce development initiatives. Now, when we began working on the program, at the time, there were no other career center models in existence in Iraq. Universities at the time were completely disconnected from industry. And in fact, they didn't consider that a connection to private sector was something they really needed. The prevailing mindset at the time was that universities were only responsible for graduating students. What happened to the graduates after leaving their education was up to them. Universities gave no thought to whether the academic training that the students received really equipped them with the skills they needed to successfully make that transition to the workforce. At the same time, graduates in Iraq were encouraged to hold out for public sector jobs. Public sector was and still remains the largest employer in Iraq. Within our own team, at the time, there was no experience or background in career services or career centers. It was just a completely new concept in Iraq. When we began, we started with 3 career centers at 3 universities. That expanded and it led to IREX helping to establish career centers at 47 universities across Iraq. And that was one at every public university and in many private universities as well. Now, the expansion from 3 career centers to 47 was over a 4-year span, and it was huge. On the next slide, I'll share with you a little of what led to that expansion. We, as IREX, launched a labor market survey in 2016 with the report being published in January of 2017. Now, prior to that, there was very little information available in terms of concrete data that would inform our work with Iraqi career centers. I want to pause for just a minute because we have a great representation from all over. And many of you are in areas that may be similar to our experience, where there's very little formal data available. I'd love to hear from you. What are some of the sources that you've used to gather data or information for your programming when there's very little formal data you can draw from? If you can just put that in the chat box, I'd love to hear your thoughts and your ideas. So the question here is, in places with little to no formal studies or data, what sources of information have you used to inform work in improving youth employability? And how have you gathered evidence and information? We'll give just a minute for some of those to come in. Yep, interviews, focus groups, input from private sector and students. Thank you. What are some other sources? Hopefully, many of you are going to have access to some robust governmental data or labor market surveying on hand and accessible. But prior to what the labor market survey we launched in 2016, like I said, there wasn't anything available. but we were gathering data. It was piece by piece. It was interview by interview, as noted here, focus group by focus group, experiment by experiment. The first time that we brought together a group of industry representatives with university senior leaders and career center staff, it was eye-opening. We sat around the table and we listened to feedback from industry representatives, and it was a huge shock for our university partners. They had never heard the opinion or feedback of industry on the skills of their graduates, and they really had no idea how their graduates were viewed. We left those early discussions, one, with a better understanding of immediate needs and the immediate realities that were facing our partners. And from there, we continued to piece more information together. We would try something, we would learn, it would work or it wouldn't, we'd adapt, and then we'd expand. We were incredibly fortunate at the time to have support from the U.S. Embassy to sustain a long-term approach to building, and that was really a critical piece for substantive change. But we also knew there were many gaps still in the information that we had. So in 2016, we decided to systematically gather our own data by launching a nationwide labor market survey. We knew, however, that it would be a really large undertaking and that we weren't fully set up for the kind of broad outreach that we wanted. So we approached this as a professional development opportunity for our career center staff and university students. Now, on the next slide, my colleague Amar Alani will share with you a little bit more information on how we went about that first labor market survey. Amar is our office director in Iraq and our program lead in our work with the Ministry of Higher Education in Baghdad, as well as career centers and industry in federal Iraq. He's been a huge part of the learning, the growth, and expansion in these areas. Amar?
Thank you very much, Lori, and hi, everyone. With limited formal data, let me start and take this point from you, Lori. Thank you very much once again to bring this to the top. And to start my little story about our the situation with the data, as well as our approach to deal with the situation at this time in Iraq. From our observation, day-to-day observation, we noticed that there is mismatch between the requirement for successfully entering the job market with the outcomes of many educational programs. That's why a following question was repeated before us: where is the gap? And how to address this gap was the next question. To answer this question, we launched back in 2016, as we mentioned, Lori, a labor market survey in cooperation with the Iraqi universities and with the two ministries of higher education in the country, after a group of students, those volunteered to support these initiatives trained by IREX. More than 500 companies has been visited to gather data. These can provide information to our partners from the private sectors to help them understand the situation in the market, as well as to inform curriculum development and also to enhance the career services in their universities. The goal of this study was to provide, again, our partner from the educational sector with information that can help them to understand the market and to develop their services. We structured at this time the questionnaire to be sure that there's some certain information will be gathered and being enhanced. For example, we were asked the industry about the qualification these required by them. We asked them about the gaps they think it is there in the readiness of the students. We asked them also about the type of training they properly can provide to the graduates if the academia do not provide that in their normal study. We asked them about the certificates, the degrees, these will be required in the near future, and also about the post maybe will be offered in the next few years. The study, it was very rich and show many areas that must be addressed to better prepare the graduate. The study offers a seed of good recommendations too. We will see that in the next slides. But before going to that part, I would like also to check our guest here and see what finding they think the employers said were most important to be there in the graduates. Please answer the poll by select one of the options. These in front of you, whether it is administrative skill or English language skill, computer skill, the other soft skills like critical thinking or problem solving. So please take your time to see what employer think it is most important at this time to be in the graduates. Shine, I think, thank you very much, Shine, you can see. Okay, thank you very much to answer. This is, as you see, there is, like you select many of these, but let me tell you, there is about 66% of those answered the questionnaire stated that the English language, it was one of the most required among knowledge actually or skills among the new graduates. That doesn't mean the other pieces not important. All the other pieces has been noted as missed in the new graduates. Let us see how we approach this is in the next slide. Yes, thank you very much. We take actually many solutions or many approaches to deal with this situation on many levels and with different or over many levels over time period. As I mentioned, the English language was one of the most important things to the industry. We work with the higher education to support that through many programs. For example, we offer a program about enhancing the English language for the non-English majors. We also support the Iraqi University to establish their English language centers, because the market also stated that there is needs to improve the hands-on programs. We support the Iraqi universities through many programs to help the students improve their practical skills. For example, initiatives about the design day has been launched, and students capstone project as well as one of the programs that we encouraged the university to manage. We also launch widely an internship program, and you will see more details later with my colleague Siako. The CDCs or the career centers, because they are like the bridge between the industries and also the universities, we saw they are essential to understand how to deal with their partners from the industry. So we offer many programs to help them to understand how to build the relationship, networking, communications, creating programs, and maintain the relationship also with the industries. With a higher level, and because the data this is very expensive and very important, we help the Iraqi university to establish their industry advisory board, where they can keep the relationship with the industry firstly and keep the data coming to the ministry. The faculty also take a good punch from our programs. So we offer training to enhance their ability in the teaching methods. That's to foster the skills building. The curriculum, it is essential also in the formula, and we provide support to enhance the curriculum in many studies, many majors. such things, such of like ethic in the engineering, problem or project-based learning, some things has been offered. You will see in the next slides that we use this approach often, gathering data and to inform our program. My colleague Stanley, who is leading the workforce area within our team, will take you to another part of our story. So let me invite him to back again. Stanley, please.
Thanks very much, Amar. And we've seen over the past few slides how both Lori and Amar have emphasized the importance of gathering data, working with partners, and some strategies for that, as well as how to use data to inform our programming. In this slide and the next, I'd like to talk a little bit about how that data, how we use it to measure the impact of our work. In 2020, IREX partnered with global analytics organization ID-Insight to conduct an impact evaluation of career services in Iraq. And graduates from the graduating classes of 2018 and 2019 from 4 public universities were sent a web-based survey. The survey was in Arabic, Kurdish, and English, with several questions about their employment status, experience accessing CDC services, and recommendations for strengthening CDC services for future cohorts. 538 students participated in this survey. ID-Insight matched graduates who had used CDC services with graduates who had not used the services on observable characteristics and compared their outcomes. This data collection, in addition to the survey, also included virtual focus groups with current students, CDC staff, and industry partners across Iraq. And the context of virtual is that, if you remember, in 2020, we were in the midst of this global pandemic. We drew upon the labor market report findings and subsequent work with career centers and industry partners since the report to try and determine what had been working and why. And so some of our key questions included: what impact do career centers and career services have on students' employability in Iraq? How has COVID-19 impacted graduates' employment? And what do Iraqi youth themselves recommend to improve career services? We were very pleased to find that the evaluation findings suggest that career development centers in Iraq are likely having a positive impact on employment outcomes. And compared to those youth who had not used CDC services, you can see on the slide here that youth who have used career development center services are more likely to be employed, less likely to report that employment has been negatively affected by COVID. And one interesting finding from this evaluation was also that among our sample, there was a much higher overall youth unemployment rate than some of the other estimates that we see from official reports. It placed the rate at about 70%. Youth themselves ranked internships at the top of the priority activities for career development centers to offer students in the future, as well as job fairs, career fairs, and job boards. They also noted that in terms of career development center service workshops, CV writing and interview preparation were ranked as most useful, followed by job search preparation workshops. And this is consistent with some of the feedback that we've heard from our industry partners as well. Employers noted that students who have completed internships know what types of questions to ask during a job interview, and that many of them come into their entry-level jobs already with an understanding of office life and work culture due to that internship experience. And we'll be curious a little bit later in the presentation during the Q&A if this resonates with your context as well. We'll be sharing a link to this ID-Insight evaluation with you as part of our follow-on today. It's actually already available in the HUBA platform, and sharing some recommendations that emerged from this evaluation toward the end of our presentation. So we'll move on to one slide on first destination surveys. And I'd like to note, I'll be talking today about 3 surveys that IREX has worked on with partners. The graphic that you see on the left here is going to be in reference to the 3rd survey. So I'll be talking about what you see visually in just a few moments. First destination surveys are common across many contexts globally, and are something that we're working on with our partners in Iraq to introduce into the Iraqi higher education system. Results from 3 different surveys provided us with different insights into one of our research questions, which is, what do students in Iraq do when they graduate? And what is the employability status of Iraqi students after graduation? So to share with you a few of the key insights, the first survey that I'll refer to is the ID Insight Career Services Evaluation, which we just spoke about. While this was not an institutional first destination survey, it did provide first destination type of data for over 500 recent graduates from the classes of 2018 and 19. This survey was conducted across Iraq in November 2020 and found that at the time, 26% of recent graduates who had used career services were employed versus 22% who were not. The second survey, which was a standalone university first destination survey, focused on graduates from a university in a recently liberated area of Iraq, which had significant challenges for youth gaining employment. The university first destination survey did not distinguish between youth who had used or did not use career services, but it showed a very high percentage of unemployment. Overall, graduates in this study who were surveyed in winter 2021 had a much lower employment rate compared to the broader ID Insight sample. Only 5% of youth at this university were employed between 3 to 15 months after graduation. However, for those 5% who were employed, the first destination survey noted that at least 35% of those youth had found career center sponsored career fairs to be helpful in gaining employment. The third set of results was from a population who had participated in our internship program before graduating. This was a first destination survey with graduates from the class of 2021 who participated in IREX and industry partner internship programming in 2020. Conducted earlier this year, the survey was a bit more nuanced than the ID Insight evaluation and the University First Destination survey in capturing first destination outcomes. In addition to asking youth about their full and part-time work, self-employment, or entrepreneurial activity, we also asked them about their continued engagement with their internship cohort and their mentors or supervisors during their internship. And as you can see on the left, we were very pleased to find that 41% of these youth were employed either part or full-time, and 11% of the survey respondents are currently employed at the company or organization where they did their 2020 internship. This is much higher than what we found through the ID Insight evaluation or the university standalone evaluation. It's worth mentioning that youth noted a number of skills gained during their internship that they use on the job, which include teamwork and collaboration, problem solving, critical thinking, and communication skills. So all of this suggests that internships are an especially important type of career services for career development centers to provide to youth. First destination surveys are one of the tools that we use at IREX to measure employment and continuing education goals of graduates, as well as data that can be used by ministry and industry partners to help understand post-graduation outcomes across Iraq. I'd like to turn the floor now to my colleague Siako, who will share more on some of the hands-on work that IREX engages in with career development centers and our partners. Referring back to our change process, you can see how these initiatives fit into our model to apply, spread, and lead to intermediary and systems level change in Iraq. Siako, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Stanley, and my colleagues. So as they have already mentioned somehow about the role of career development centers across Kurdistan and Iraq, and to do lots of employee engagement, faculty, and different stakeholders together. I would like to take this chance to say that we have career development centers, which are known as CDCs, my colleague Stanley mentioned at the beginning, launched across Iraq. And these CDCs have really great impact on the workforce development areas, as well as higher education through conducting various kind of trainings and activities. So we have different types of experiential education activities we support through the career development centers across Iraq, including training workshops, career fairs, private sector engagement, alumni engagement, coaching sessions, design day and internship program, as my colleagues mentioned. And of course, all these results from the first destination survey and other labor market surveys actually show that how impactful the program and these initiatives are. So some of these initiatives or major activities, actually they bring the knowledge from the classroom and the practical setting in order to make the knowledge work. So actually they bridge the classroom with the practice. For example, internships design, they have been enormously impactful, and applied learning experience and knowledge application that's been gained from the classroom and having it in a practical setting in a private sector or maybe workplace. So let me just concentrate on these two examples in my talk here. So one of them actually is, as I mentioned, and my colleagues also showed the result from the labor market survey as well as the first destination survey, is the internship program. Actually, one of the most impactful programs that have been for the students over the past few years, based on the feedback of the employers, students, and the labor market surveys that we have conducted. We just showed some of the results and highlights from this program. Before I show you the student feedback as example to show the impact of this program, let me share with you this youth voice among hundreds of youth feedback from the program. So I just want to bring one example from a female student, fourth-year student who participated in the program. So she did her internship program in a social entrepreneurship center in Iraq, and she was from the administration and economics department. So actually the wording is that she has shared with us, already quoted here. She noted that after she participated in the program, she gained a lot of skills and knowledge, that she put this into practice and linking it linking her education and classroom knowledge, theoretical knowledge to what's available on the ground. So she could turn this to an initiative and starting her own small business and promoting her business through social media, Facebook, Instagram. And of course, she could bring clothes from neighboring countries, including Turkey, and she's selling them for little profit. She loves what she's doing, actually, and that's making us excited and everybody excited about the impact of the program. And as I said, this is just one small example in a big pool of many other successful stories. So now let me share with you a link in the chat box. It's a nice Mentimeter tool. It's funny, it's nice, and I would like you to share your thoughts about this question, and just brainstorming whatever you think is like, what do you think some of the most important skills are the students gain through the internship program? So it could be any soft skill you might be wondering, or you might be highlighting from this program. So the poll is already here. So there are actually three tabs or options. You can choose only one or maybe three if you want, and you can submit, and then we will see the results on the screen. Yeah, confidence, time management, team working, good. Yeah. Computer skills, definitely. So for most of the departments, they participate in telecommunication or maybe other related departments, they could also gain skills in that field. Let's give a few more seconds if anyone else would like to share something. Yeah, general soft skills, definitely. English language skills, communication, critical thinking. Yeah, that's interesting, like to see soft skills, critical thinking, confidence as well. So because yeah, collaborative skills as well. So these are some of the major skills that the students have gained through the program. And yeah, critical thinking, communication, definitely. I think you are touching exactly what's already been found in the program. Excellent. Yeah, problem solving as well. That's a good one. So let's go back to the slide, and let me share with you the feedback from the students. So as you can see, the skills that the students actually developed throughout the program, you can see self-confidence, interacting with other people, interaction, interpersonal skills, analyzing data, teamwork, as you mentioned, ability to acquire the knowledge, as well as like using it in a practical and maybe in a more creative way, problem solving, as noted also in the pool. So these are some of the skills, major skills that the students noted in the surveys that they have gained throughout the program, which are really in line with what the labor market surveys and the fair destination surveys tell us, that these are the skills needed for the student, for the graduate, in order to get employment, which is really exciting to see that. Let's move to the next slide and to show you another example. So another example of the experiential learning from our initiative through career development centers is called Design Day Challenge. So just to give you a little bit about what's Design Day Challenge, or what we call sometimes the capstone initiative. So Design Day is an academic learning experience that better equips the students for the world of work in a practical setting by applying what they have already learned from the classroom, the theory, and linking it to the practical setting, which is the workplace. Students work in teams with faculty advisors at the university and also industrial representatives, depending on like how many stakeholders are engaged, to design solution to the real world problems faced by local companies. So basically the local companies raise issues and know the challenges, and the university students take these challenges as opportunities, and they work on in order to solve these problems by applying it in a real setting. So IREX worked with career development centers back in 2018, and we coached the career development center staff and the faculty members to start designing their own Design Day Challenge based at the universities. And then among all of this, and after the trainings, of course, we had the chance to select 12 top teams, and they could come to the IREX 2018 Workforce Development Conference that took place in Baghdad, and the projects were selected, and they were also shown. As you can see here from the slide, we have 64 student teams participated in this national Design Day Challenge, 24 universities participating, and over 250 students benefiting from the program. The picture on the right side of the slide is a Design Day toolkit, which we have already developed, and we trained the students and the university faculty members to start working on their projects. And the middle one, again, it's another creative project, which is Smart Green Interactive City. It's a smart one, so that was also very creative. So these are some of the examples that showed how the students could link the theory with the practice in a practical setting. And of course, we have the design and implement of a smart crunch for the disabled. As you can see, the hand robot on the left side of the slide, and it's really creative, and they could even start working on robotic initiatives or activities. So through these kind of projects and maybe challenges, so they could also develop different skills, including problem solving, problem-based learning, communication, presentation, and many other skills that are required by the employers nowadays in order to make a smooth transition to the workplace. And now let's turn over to my colleague to share IREX recommendation to stakeholders from this. Thank you very much again.
Great, thank you so much, Siako. And I see from the chat as well, just several of our participants noting and enthusiasm and endorsement for the design day that you were just speaking about. We wanted to offer as our closing slide a set of recommendations that are based both off of our own work and engagement in Iraq, but that also represent the voices of many of our industry partners, career development center partners, some of whom are in this session today, as well as the voices of youth and our ministry colleagues in Iraq. We hope that these recommendations that come from us, our partners, as well as the results of the labor market survey and the ID Insight evaluation may be valuable to you in your own country contexts. And we look forward to your questions if you have any questions about them or any of the challenges that you might see associated with them. So to those of you who are here in the workshop or who may be listening later, who are university leaders, we encourage you to support the ongoing professional development for Career Development Center staff and university faculty, offering your faculty and staff the opportunity to attend and present at workshops and conferences, to network and collaborate with peers, and to identify relevant opportunities and pursue them in their fields of expertise. We encourage you to promote the collection and use of data for decision-making, which is really win-win for faculty, for the institution, and for your own benefit. So for example, if an employer is noting that there's an emerging need, but the university doesn't have a program yet to train students efficiently, this is an opportunity to work with that employer to partner and develop appropriate programming. First destination surveys are also an excellent tool to understand what your own graduates are doing post-graduation, including employment rates, further studies, or other activities. We encourage you to promote industry, university, and alumni engagement via experiential education activities. We've shown you several examples, and we know that not only from our work in Iraq, but from the work that we do to support youth and leadership programming around the world, how beneficial internships and other experiences are that bridge theory and practice to prepare youth for their futures, as well as to enrich the companies and organizations that they're working for. For our donor community, government, ministry partners, we encourage the development of stronger private sector and university engagement to support economic development. And we know that that's a very broad recommendation. So I'll just kind of give a few examples of that, whether it's through activities such as formally setting up industry advisory boards, alumni advisory boards, university-based research and innovation centers, or developing skills building programs for or with local industry. We encourage this across the board, and we recognize that this, as well as these other recommendations, do take time. We encourage you to strengthen skills for international business, including English language and computer ICT skills, as well as digital and information literacy for the workplace. This is what we hear time and time again from our industry partners in Iraq, and we encourage you to think about working with universities to design programming to meet these needs. The next recommendation goes hand in hand with that, developing university graduates' competencies to meet labor market needs, whether that's through internship programming, through designing short courses through your career development centers, through industry input in and review of university curricula that can lead to tweaks or additions to programming, including, for example, certification programs. And finally, allowing for flexibility in program design to allow for strategies such as building scaffolded approaches and the ability in programming to pilot initiatives to learn, adapt, and build incrementally over time. That's what we've been privileged to do with our partners at the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research in Iraq, as well as our industry partners and universities. So these are some of the recommendations that we wanted to share with you. And now, in the last 10 minutes of our session with you, we'd love to listen to any questions that you may have, whether it's about these recommendations or whether it's on points that we presented on throughout the presentation. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat, or if anyone would like to unmute, we absolutely welcome you to unmute as well. And perhaps I can kick it off. I did see in the chat that there was a question posed if anyone in the session today has any experience planning or using first destination surveys. And if you do, just maybe what you've learned about this in terms of how you've done the survey, or if you've used results to improve upon university curricula or career services. And a follow-on question to that, if you do have experience with first destination surveys, is how you have worked with alumni to ensure a response rate to these surveys, if anybody has strategies for that. I can share that from my own experience in first destination surveys, the first time that I was involved in first destination survey programming was when I worked for a university in Kazakhstan at a business school. And we used a number of methods to get responses from recent graduates. In addition to emailing links to the surveys, one of the ways that we actually found very effective was using volunteers to call our graduates and just picking up the phone and spending the hours to call them. And great.
Let me share also from my experience. I noticed, for example, in Dubai University, they have like a kind of magazine for the honor participants from the alumni, those taking good position in the companies. So they are regularly, every 3 months, for example, they have issued a new copy with these list of the honor alumni. And they are actually creating data, good data, and keep communicate with those regularly about inviting them, for example, to the campus to be there and to meet with the graduates. Plus, they are New York University, for example, in Abu Dhabi, they are creating good communication with their graduates, those taking a position in the industry, for example, to train the students or those was close to graduate. So many approaches, but the most important, I think, is to create data. This data for those graduates are updated always whenever they have movement or changes in their life. So there is updating system, and keep communicate with these people. That is actually some approach to help keep communication with the graduate. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Omar, for adding that point. And we do see in the chat as well from one of our colleagues that business, trade, and industry associations are stakeholders that represent different members, and just asking about our opinion on that. If there's Siako or Amar, if either of you would like to share anything about perhaps our programming and cooperation with business associations.
So, Stanley, can you refer? I cannot access to the chat box for some reason.
Oh, sure. Just talking a little bit about our involvement with business or trade associations in our programming in Iraq.
You mean the Chamber of Commerce or private sector in general?
You can provide.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Definitely, through our programs, when we talk about the private sector engagement or the workforce development, that's something fully engaging the private sector and employers. So that's what we believe actually how we can inform the system and system level change from the bottom to up or from up to bottom. So by targeting different like levels of the system. So that's all going to the private sector. So we engage private sector for from different levels, like through the career development centers to inform like to enhance the skills of the students in order to have them practice for smooth transition to the workplace, as well as for the program through Industry Advisory Board, for example, to make recommendations for the Ministry of Higher Education, having different members from different stakeholders, including the private sector mostly, because the whole target is to have the system, the university, and the students going to a direction where it's leading them to the private sector, and that's the employability at the end of the day, and that's how the data actually shows the impact of the programs that we have done. And the examples I shared, the experiential learning and activities, actually they are also fully enhanced and informed by the employers, and there's actually a good engagement by the private sector, but there's still more efforts need to be made because so that, as my colleague Laurie mentioned, starting from zero, and this is not something really was there, but it was developed from the scratch, which needs a lot of years, and we are already to a great level of that engagement, but our expectation and our hope is much higher than what we have now.
Great, thanks so much, Siako. And I would like to, just in case some people don't have access to the chat, there was a question on if IREX has US university project partners help in guiding or collaborating with Iraqi higher education institutional partners. And maybe Laurie, you could just give a brief answer to that question as well.
Sure, absolutely. And thank you for the question, Lubna. We began realizing that the US model of career services would be a bit overwhelming to start with in Iraq. And so we initially explored career services models in Lebanon, in fact. From there, we also engaged several career services professionals from a variety of US universities for elements of their expertise and their programming. And at the same time, of course, with Stanley and internally within IREX, expertise within career services or career centers as well. So we've used a variety of partners, but absolutely drawing on US university partners. Thank you for the question.
Great, and I think that there's a question from Jaber that may end up being our last question. It's a big question, and it's probably one that many people on this call are have experience dealing with, particularly over the past 2 years. So the question is, how do we raise the level of acceptance of individuals to deal with distance education? Thank you for posing a big one. If any of my colleagues would like to jump in with some initial thoughts.
Well, that is a big question to close on for sure. And it's one we were all still grappling with. But within some of our programming within Iraq, we took an approach to help support Iraqi universities as the pandemic began and the shift was taken. And it was incremental, it was a challenge, and it really is just going to take more and more practice is the short answer. I think we could go into very long discussion on that. But I think the benefit to the pandemic presented challenge, the benefit has been that universities that traditionally weren't open to or as open to online or e-learning have had to make that shift. And that has been a positive thing for students as they gain skills and just trying to navigate their classwork. They're gaining some computer skills and skills in areas that they would not have otherwise. So we are embracing that opportunity that comes with that challenge, and we'll just continue like everybody to learn ways to do that.
Great, thanks very much, Laurie, and thank you for the question. I would like to mention to everyone here that there is a handout that is on the HUBA platform that has links both to the labor market survey that IREX did with partners in 2016, 2017, as well as the ID Insight evaluation. You can look at both of those if you'd like to learn more about those initiatives. The handout also includes IREX's contact information. We'd be happy to hear from any of you if you have follow-on questions regarding the session today that you didn't have a chance to ask in the chat, or if you'd simply like to introduce yourselves to us. We always love to hear from other individuals who are involved in career services. It's something that we are very dedicated to, and we're always interested in learning from others about your own models and your own experiences too. With that, I'll just check if any of my colleagues have any final words before we conclude the session today.
Thank you very much, Stanley, and thank you for everyone. Actually, no addition from my side.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, just echoing thanks for joining us today, and hope to connect with you all as you're doing similar work probably in other areas, so we can continue to learn from one another in the process. But thank you for being here today.
Great, thank you all so much. And to Amy, the handout and evaluation are in the HUBA platform under this session. So when you logged in through HUBA, you should be able to see that right there. And if not, I'll put my email in the chat real quickly, just so that you can reach out to me and we can be sure to get those to you. All right, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.